Alrighty, so a couple of days ago, we look at all of the designated player from each respective Western Conference team. Now we're going to do the Eastern Conference version. And what I found in terms of the Eastern Conference version is that this is definitely home to some of the most expensive designated player contract in the league so far. And in one cases, it is the most expensive contract in MLS history. But I've also found that while there are some teams that gets the best out of their DP, we also see some teams, especially one specific team that you probably know what I'm going to talk about, probably get the worst in terms of their DP. And here's a quick hint: Chicago fans, you probably want to stay away of watching this video. But we start off with Atlanta United. So Atlanta, they have historically been hit and miss in terms of getting their DP right, but this season they actually got it right in all three of their designated player. I mean, Thiago Almada, arguably one of the best number 10 in the league, and a guy that is going to really follow the same footstep as what we saw with Miguel Almiron, going to sell off for a huge amount of money in the future. Currently earns $2.3 million. Giorgio Yakamakis, who has been a guy that he has some huge footstep to basically fill the shoes of Joseph Martinez, especially wearing that number 7 shirt, and he deliver. I mean, just an amazing season this year for him. 2.16 million, and even their summer rival Saba Lobjanidze has done relatively well for this Atlanta United team. And although he's not a regular starter for this team, he definitely brings the energy coming off the bench, and his salary is 2.15 million. Then we go to Charlotte FC, and this is where things kind of start to go downhill in terms of teams of how they wisely in terms of spending their designated player spot. And while Karol Swiderski, I still think it's a good contract, and for Charlotte, he's been kind of the premier designated player for this team with a $2.26 million contract. The rest, yeah, not so much. And Kamil Jozwiak, I mentioned many times before how this is going to go down as one of the biggest busts in all these designated player history, and that, yeah, this season he did get a little bit better. Well, depending on how you say a little bit better, it's not really a lot, because he had a disastrous first season for Charlotte FC, and this year, he improved just a little bit, but clearly not worth the designated player tag, and he earns 1.22 million. And the same goes for Enzo Capetti, who he's gonna also start to go down as a bust, mainly because he's been having some injury concern, but also just never really settled in for Charlotte FC, and currently earning 1.14 million. Then we get to the disaster. So, as I said in the beginning of the video, if you're a Chicago fan, you probably don't want to watch this video, because, yeah, we're gonna talk about probably the worst way to basically spend your money on DP player, because you gotta say the Chicago Fire pretty much has arguably three of the worst DP in the league this year. And we start off with Xherdan Shaqiri, which has been really a hotly debate topic of whether or not is Shaqiri living up to his DP tag. A lot of people say is an overwhelming no, and I agree with those people. I mean, $8.15 million. He's the third most expensive player in the league, behind Lorenzo Insigne and Lionel Messi. And well, Shaqiri at times, yeah, I will say that the contract that he is earning, and the fact that he's supposed to be the showcase pieces of the Chicago Fire team, just have not done so. Like, it's saying something that fellow number 10 Brian Gutierrez was overperforming what Xherdan Shaqiri is. And I even said before, when Shaqiri was injured and when Gutierrez basically stepped into that role, Gutierrez definitely provide much more spark in that attacking midfielder role compared to when Shaqiri is there. And I've also said that this is where you have a really big problem on your hand, the Chicago Fire, because yes, on one hand it makes sense to put Gutierrez as the regular starter, because he's better when he is in that spot without Shaqiri on the pitch. But at the same time, you can't just bench Xherdan Shaqiri. I mean, that would be a really bad look, especially with the contract that he's sitting in. And I'm pretty sure Shaqiri's not going to be very happy if he's going to be just sitting on the bench like that. And I know they try to put both Shakiri and Gutierrez on the same pitch, and it just didn't really quite work out because I think they try to put Gutierrez on the wing, and he just not is not effective on the wing area. So yeah, a huge swing and a miss in terms of Shaqiri's contract, but not as huge of a swing and a miss compared to Jairo Torres, arguably the worst DP player this season and maybe of all time with the way that he's making $1.47 million. And in his 2 years as a designated player for the Chicago Fire, he has registered an exact number of goals and assists of Goose Egg. He has no goals and no assists in terms of his 2 years as a designated player. I mean, if that number doesn't tell you that, you could argue he might be the worst DP player of all time. I mean, I know if there is argument of the worst DP player of all time, obviously, one player immediately comes up in my mind is Innocent when the San Jose Earthquakes signed him back I think in 2015, and they made him a designated player. And part of that isn't really his fault because he got injured a lot, but man, he turns out to be a massive bust for the Quakes. And the contract that he was on was like $1.5 million, which at that time was really expensive for a designated player. But yeah, for Jairo Torres, he's definitely gone down to that innocent route with the way that, yeah, the fact that he has not registered a single goal and a single assist, and he's occupying one of the designated player spot, just absolutely one, arguably the worst contract and the worst DP player of all time. And then you have Usman Doumbia, a guy that you probably have not heard a lot about, and you didn't even know that he occupies a designated spot for the Chicago Fire. Well, that's because he hasn't really been playing a lot for the Fire. He's been suffering from injuries this season too. Now, the good news for the Fire is that at least Doumbia not only can be bought down in terms of DP contract if they decide to exercise the permanent purchase of him, because of course they got him on loan from FC Lugano. But they basically bought him down as a TAM player, which I don't know if that's gonna make the Fire feel better that they have one DP spot open, and at least they got rid of one bad DP contract. But either way, yeah, the Chicago Fire just been a huge swing and a miss in terms of these DP contract. And you just hope that things will improve. But then this is also the same team that is rumored to potentially get Tom Barlow to this team, and also Greg Hitz potentially is going to be in helm for at least another season because he signed a contract extension. So from probably the worst decision in terms of how to use your free DP spot to probably one of the best decision. We got FC Cincinnati in terms of their free DP. They definitely hit it out of the park in terms of their free DP. Lucho Acosta, the reigning MVP this year with a 2.22 million. Obuna Bina Wubodo, arguably the best number six in the league on a 1.29 million contract. And then Aaron Bupenza, really filling the shoes perfectly and almost carried the torch that Brenner left on this FC Cincinnati team after Brenner departed this season and made his jump to Europe with a $1.13 million contract. Yeah, easily. You look at the amount that they have spent on their DP player, and all of them has produced well above what they were hoping to get. And it's also not surprised that when you see teams that are doing well and get the best out of their designated player, that they are usually teams that are in the upper echelon in the league. And for Cincinnati, I know their fans are going to take a while to try to get over that Hell is Real Derby Eastern Conference final loss, but hey, at least they won the Supporters Shield. Speaking of Hell is Real Derby, the Columbus Crew, they're another team that has done well in terms of getting best out of their designated player. Cucho Hernandez, 2.88 million, Diego Rossi, 2.67 million, and Darlington Nap 1.8 million dollar. All three of those players are not only deserve to be DP player, but their quality is definitely above in terms of the DP tag that they have. And again, a team that gets the best out of their designated player is a team that is in the upper echelon in MLS, and also a team that is going to be representing the Eastern Conferences this year MLS Cup. Now we look at DC United, and surprisingly, DC actually has done well in terms of getting the best out of their designated player, which is something you usually not don't see that happen. In fact, you could say that things are kind of been a little bit sideways when you can say that DC United has got the best out of their designated player. Because when you look at the two designated players that they currently have, Christian Benteke and Mateus Click, both of these both of these players has really live up to its DT tag. I mean, Christian Benteke was a huge gamble, considering that you don't know exactly is he going to be like a 10 plus goal scorer, and well, he has the number to back up. Oh yeah, he definitely had the number to back up. 14 goals this season, had a really good year, and while he definitely did had some spell where he did a he was a very pretty much as a microcosm of his career, where Christian Benteke, as much as he has shown that he can be a lethal goal scorer, he also missed some of the worst miss you can imagine. He's still a guy that is a staple in terms of that number 9 position for DC. And then Mateus Glick, I won't be surprised they might think about bringing him another season. He's one of the most underrated deep line playmaker in the league, and really had a good season this year playing that role. Then we get to the elephant of the room, Inter Miami. So this is, I think, where everybody is looking for me to talk about Inter Miami. They of course filled up all three of their DP spot. Obviously, Lionel Messi is the most expensive player of all time in terms of the amount that he earns, 20 million or $20.44 million, which I thought that seems low too. I thought it was probably right around like the $25 million range, but again, when I look on the MLSPA salary guide, they did mention the guarantee compensation, but obviously we know that Lionel Messi definitely earns more than that per year because of the Apple TV deal that he also has. Then you got Sergio Busquets making 1.77 million, and then Gregory actually is listed as a designated player. You notice I didn't put Leo Campana on that list because they did buy down his contract this season, but Gregory is now being listed as a designated player at 961,000 K. And Gregory, it's such a shame the fact that he suffered that torn ACL early this season, but I do think that he's going to come back strong, and he's going to be a vital part of this team in that defensive midfield role. I mean, I think as bad as Inter Miami defense was, a lot of that has to do with, well, there was two things. One, I think the loss of Jordi Alba for the rest of the season really hurt that defense. But really, before the whole Messi and his friends circular to Inter Miami, I think you could argue Gregory's loss to Inter Miami was even bigger, considering he was the guy that was protecting that back line. He was the guy that is willing to do the dirty working, is your typical number 6 kind of player, protecting the back line, and putting out the fire before it goes into a really leaky kind of back line that we see with this Inter Miami team. And them getting him back this next season is going to be huge, and he's definitely worth the designated player tag. I mean, there's not a lot of number 6 and defensive midfielder got that tag, and if you got that DP tag, you deserve it, and it's not surprised that as I mentioned with here back at FC Cincinnati with Obina Wobodo, another guy that is a great number 6. I mean, it's not surprised that some of these teams has definitely got it right in terms of getting the best out of their DP spot, especially in that number 6 spot. Then we go to CF Montreal. Now they're the only team in the league that is actually have less than 2 designated player. Their only designated player right now is Victor Wanyama at $1.8 million. But yeah, there's no doubt that Montreal. It's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do with Victor Wanyama. I believe he's going to be under contract for next season too, but really he just never fit in the system that Hernan Lasada runs. So with a new head coach coming in for Montreal, knowing Lasada has departed, is he going to be back into that fold, or maybe they're thinking about moving on from him in the off season if there's any suitor that is looking to take his contract? Because again, it's such a shame that Wanyama was a crucial part of this Montreal team with Hernanzi was coaching this team, and it sucks to see that he did definitely suffer an injury, but just never been able to play into her and Lasada team. It probably has to frustrate him too, because he's been a vital part to this Montreal team, and then last season he was kind of a no show whatsoever. Then we go to Nashville SC. Now for Nashville, when you look at the designated player spot, the two DP that they have been having ever since when they came into the league has been an absolute hit. Hani Mukhtar, obviously the last year MVP with a 3.18 million contract, and definitely worth every penny of that contract. Walker Zimmerman, a guy that was back-to-back defender player of the year with a 2.05 million contract. But this is where we get to the third DP, and that third DP has just it's almost like it's been a curse for Nashville. They just cannot solve that third DP kind of production. I mean, it's been a revolving door of just so many players that has been that third designated player for this Nashville team. And now the latest player is Sam Surridge, who he had a good start when he made his debut for Nashville in the Leeds Cup, but he just never able to capture that into the regular season. I mean, besides that one time where I think he scored a hat trick in the regular season, he just never lived up to the tag, and that's got to be frustrating for Nashville because really, besides Hani Mukhtar, they just have not been able to have anyone even coming close to the ability to kind of put the pressure off of Mukhtar in terms of the goal scoring, and also not to mention that number nine spot. Again, they have not really had a decent number nine. Probably the best number nine that they ever had is CJ Sapon, and that's saying something because CJ Sapon went through a really long dry spell without scoring a goal to a point that he was basically shipped off, and they were hoping Sam Surge was going to be the answer. So far, it just have not been the case, at least if you don't include what happened in the Leeds Cup. Then you got the New England Revolution. Now, New England is kind of interesting because, I listed three of these DP, though one of them we know that he's probably no longer going to be a designated player and even no longer be with the New England Revolution. Carlos Hill is definitely not that player. He's going to be part of this team. He's basically the staple and the heart and soul of this team with $3.55 million on the contract. But the player that I'll say that is probably not going to be part of this team unless they decide to renegotiate his contract this off season is Gustavo Bo. His contract does end this year, and his contract is $2.67 million. And knowing the fact that they've also just recently signed Thomas Shankala on a permanent deal and made him a designated player, technically I probably should put Thomas Shankala on this list instead of Gustavo Bo because technically Gustavo Bo is out of contract and it's unless if the Revs don't negotiate his contract, he's going to be a free agent, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of teams that is looking to try to get a player like Gustavo Bo, who has I think been a very underrated number nine in this league. And then speaking of number nine, yeah, Tomo Veroni, yeah, Veroni has had a very underwhelming season. $1.85 million is his contract, and just really never got going. And they're hoping that it's going to change heading into next season, especially with the way that now that Bo is no longer with this team, they're hoping Baroni will make that step up, and he'll be the perfect replacement in case if they decide to not re-sign Gustavo Bo to a new contract. Then we go to the New York Red Bulls, and this is where we get back to how to not use your designated player spot. So Dante Vanzeir, arguably one of the worst DP in the league. I mean, it's just been such a polarized season for Dante Vanzeir, and not in a good way too, because it's been a very mediocre season with injuries problem, and then we had the racial remark that he used that basically suspended him for a couple of games, and even though he was welcome back to the fold, he didn't really produce anywhere close to the DP tag that he has, and also the amount that they thought that the Red Bulls were going to get from him when they signed in this off season with a 1.46 million on the contract. And then Luquinhas, after had a good season last year, this was a huge fall from grace for him. A very bad season this year, contributing nowhere near the amount that he had last year, and he does still have that DP tag on him with $1.22 million. And keep in mind, both of these players is under contract next season, and they're just hoping that both of these players will bounce back. But especially, the Red Bulls are looking to try to get that third DP. There has been rumor this offseason that third DP could be Emil Forsberg from RB Leipzig, and if that is the case, I think that's definitely a good sign considering Forsberg has done really well for RB Leipzig, and he's still not past his prime yet. I think that will really help this Red Bulls team that is desperate to look for a spark on the attack. I mean, not only this season they desperately lost the ability that Lewis Morgan brought to this team, mainly because Morgan pretty much spent the entire season on the IR, but they just don't have any weapons whatsoever on the attacking end, and two of their designated player that's supposed to produce those attacking end definitely did not do that this year. And then looking at the other New York club, I mean, you could argue the other New York club definitely didn't get the best out of their designated player too. Thiago Martins is actually their most expensive designated player, which I think NYCFC is the only team that has their defender as their most expensive designated player. With him at 2.11 million, and I'll say this again, but before you I said this before, and I'll say this again, and you hear me say this a lot. It's still kind of a reach and almost a cardinal sin to sign a defender on a designated player. And Thiago Martins, he's been okay, but he's nowhere near the DP tag that he should. The fact that he's earning more than what Walker Zimmerman is making is kind of criminal because not saying that Thiago Martins is bad, but he's definitely not nowhere near the level that I think he deserved to be on a DP tag as a defender. Then you got Santiago Rodriguez, who had a really kind of underwhelming season. I mean, a lot of people were excited when he was brought back to this team, and at least he kind of provided the spark at the beginning, but really kind dwindle as the season goes along with a 1.3 million dollar contract. And then Talis Magno, this was supposed to be the year he made that step up. Instead, he gone backwards in his development, and unfortunately, part of that isn't actually his fault because they really keep putting him out of position, especially playing as a false nine when it is pretty clear that he is not a false nine, and he's making 1.2 million dollar. Then we go to Orlando City, who actually have one DP spot open. I mean, that's kind of crazy because considering Orlando City did a big makeover last off season, signing a bunch of players, that it's hard to believe that the only designated player that they signed out of the mega spending that they had last off season was Martin Ojeda. And even then, Ojeda this season, I mean, you could argue he probably shouldn't be belong as a designated player, considering he wasn't a regular starter. I mean, he was good, but he's not a regular starter, and you usually don't want to burn one of your DP tag on a player that doesn't regularly play. But he does earn 912K, and then Facundo Torres, I was shocked when I found out he's only making 993K. I feel like that's kind of criminal, underpay that Facu Torres is earning, consider how good he's been for Orlando City for ever since he come to this team. But yeah, again, very surprised to see Orlando City does have a DP spot open, even though they spent a lot. And I won't be surprised this offseason they're going to try to do so and maybe even fill up that third DP spot so that they can once again make a run for MLS Cup next year. Speaking of a run for MLS Cup, the Philadelphia Union is hoping to do it again next year, and it's unsurprised that their free DP is pretty much their pretty much their big free. Mikel Uru, Daniel Gazdag, and Julian Carranza is their free DP spot. Uru makes 1.94 million, Gazdag made 1.35 million, and Carranza made $950,000. Now, when the Union did announce today end of season roster, well, before they did, there was speculation that Julian Carranza was not going to return. That actually is actually not gonna happen because they did pick up his option and he will stay with the Union. So yeah, the Union is gonna still get their trio back next season. And although yes, they are gonna lose some key pieces, they potentially could lose Alejandro Bedoya, which could be a huge loss, especially for locker room president, that veteran leadership. And then also Kyle Wagner could potentially move on considering he's been saying that has no intention to continue next season with the Philadelphia Union. I do still think that this team should be good enough, and as long as this trio continue to produce, yeah, this Union team is going to be competitive in the Eastern Conference. And then finally, we finish off with probably, arguably, the worst way to use your DP spot. I mean, I talk about Chicago Fire being bad in terms of using their DP spot. Toronto FC basically are just saying, "Hold my beer," because yeah, Lorenzo Insigne, you talk about one of the worst DP signing, and you could argue, when you look at how the Chicago Fire are spending the amount of on their DP player compared to what we see with Toronto FC, it's very similar. They have a player that is just making a bunch of money that is clearly not happy. Insigne, of course, it's been well documented that he's not happy during his time with Toronto FC. He's making $15.4 million. Was the most expensive player and the highest earner in the league until Lionel Messi showed up to MLS. Then you got Federico Benedeschi, $6.24 million. I think this is the only team in the league that has two players that make more than $5 million or $6 million in this case. And yeah, just Obviously this was part of that mega deal that brought both of these Italians to Toronto FC, and it just have not worked out whatsoever. I mean, both of these players has not only been very underwhelming, but they spend more time in terms of bickering at each other and creating more off the field drama than actually produce the amount of goals and produce the product they have. And as I said in my moving forward series episode about Toronto FC, no guarantee that either of these players is going to return. And then you got Jonathan Osorio, who I think he had an okay season, but definitely not a season that is is uh is considered to be better than what he has produced for this team. I mean, obviously, Jonathan Osorio, he's going to remain to be a designated player. He's basically Mr. Toronto FC. He's kind of like what we see with the Quakes and how no matter what happened, Wondolowski is going to be a designated player because he's pretty much Mr. San Jose Earthquakes. Here, making $1.4 million. That is Jonathan Osorio. But yeah, there's no doubt that TFC is desperate to try to get rid of one of their DP. And as I mentioned, don't be surprised next year. Even though both Insigne and Benedeski is going to have their are going to remain on the roster because their contract is not going to run out until 2026. One of these players probably is going to request a transfer or hand out a transfer request, and we might see one, if not both, Italian could be out of this TFC team by the beginning of next season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at all these designated player from their respective Eastern Conference team. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And as I mentioned in my Western Conference video about looking at all these DP player, I will definitely think about doing a follow-up video looking at some of the best designated player this year and looking at some of the worst designated player this year as well. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.